Okay, so I can open with a question, with a meta question for our speakers. So what do they think about the level of attendees, like how good or bad they are, based on the questions you get asked after your lectures?
You mean like how tall they are, or?
How tall, how fat, like how smart?
Yeah, I can start there. I found them at all different levels. So there were some who were introductory, there were some who were expert. They all grasped. So in terms of their expertise, it was very mixed. In terms of them grasping what we were talking about, they were all getting it. So, you know, you got very bright attendees, basically. That's what I saw.
Okay.
I think it really depends on the topic and how well the speaker actually covered the topic. If it's a wide-ranging topic and there are 5 minutes or whatever of questions, that's probably okay. But if it's a fairly simple topic and you've got 5, 10 minutes of questions, either you didn't do your job very well as a speaker, or that person was nodding off and using Twitter while your speech was going on. But in general, it's Java 2 days, so the Bulgarians that are here are amazing. So that's just my 2 cents.
This is the politically correct answer?
Always.
Okay. Does the audience want to ask us, our speakers, anything? Like, what shampoo do you use?
I don't use shampoo. Oh, good question. Same.
That's tricky. Okay, maybe what editors they use?
I think
I ask
my overall impression of the Bulgarian attendees of this conference is they don't like asking questions. Ask a question, any question.
I would like to encourage you.
No, it's not true.
I disagree with that.
We actually love questions. It helps greatly the speaker because, for one thing, it's a sort of interaction that we lack when we are just talking at the stage. We're just alone, and when we see people interested in the talk or in the topic, and we see the interaction, it really encourages us to do other talks and explore other things. And there's nothing like a silly or bad question. So every question counts, and every question makes sense. So don't be afraid to raise questions.
Yeah, I have one.
I think I had completely the opposite. People were asking questions in my talks, and when there was not enough time to answer these questions, they came up to me in the hallway. So I had pretty much discussions and some lively new things they come up with. But in my case, should that help as well, which was good actually. So perhaps not that many questions from out of the audience directly, but afterwards they came up to me in my case, and I love that. I love discussion. If you think differently, that makes us better. So in that part, I agree with you.
Yeah, Luis here. Hi. I did my session yesterday. I think this is the 4th time I've done this session in different countries. And I have to say, this was the most interactive one by far. I got a lot of questions, actually. Probably, I also had 5 minutes towards the end of my session, but I got a lot of questions, good questions as well, in a topic that's relatively new. I was talking about GraphQL, which is not something that's mainstream yet, right? So I'm very pleased, and my impression is quite positive. My only suggestion to such an amazing audience is let's use more Twitter. I'm missing the tweeting a bit more. Other than that, it's brilliant. I'm glad that I came to Sofia. Много благодаря.
Hey, so on to my question.
Yes.
All right, so I was thinking, what inspired you or drove you towards what you do or what you're doing right now? If you can remember. I mean, you know, the feeling.
Sorry, could I get that question again? I wasn't.
Can you repeat, please?
What inspired you or what drove you towards what what you do right now, your development and stuff?
So I'll go first. I drifted into it. There wasn't anything in particular. I once went to a talk by the head of the MI5, that's the British spy agency, and he said that actually he drifted into it too. You know, he had, at university, he had somebody tap him on the shoulder, actually the cliche version, and ask him if he wanted to come and work for them, but they couldn't tell him what the job was until he'd been accepted. And he said most people drift into the job that they do. Nobody sits down at the age of whatever, 18, 20, 15, and decides that they're going to be what they end up going to be. Or some people do, but it's very rare. So most people think they're going to do something, and then they drift into something else, and I'm like most people. I found myself doing programming, being a developer, almost by accident, and I just loved it. So once you find something you love, you stay with it. If you're asking about moving on to becoming a speaker, that's more about circumstances allowed me to become an expert in a particular area, and I decided that I would follow that and do it independently for a while rather than work in a company. And that tends to mean that you need to get your name out there, have people know about you, because that way you get more business. So that was the origin of how I got into this process.
When I speak about something, this is the way that in which I understand it better. So this is my primary motivation. First, to share my knowledge, and also to gain additional knowledge about the topic in which I speak.
So I think I share the same as my colleague. So it's speaking as a form of sharing a knowledge, but also getting deeper into some topic. Because like you can learn a lot of things just by reading something, but if you want to speak about it, you have to learn more deeply, and spend some more time playing with it or learning about it. So that's a great way to actually learn something in a more deeper way.
I guess we're going one by one. I think I agree. I mean, there's two motivations for me when I do a speaking session. Something that I really know a lot about, and I'm so passionate about it that I just want to share my knowledge, right? And get feedback, or something I really want to learn that I find super interesting, and I want to put myself under pressure, right, to get that knowledge, right, and then test that knowledge with the audience, right? So getting that interaction and those questions really also improves my knowledge, right, which is a win-win situation for the audience and for me.
I think one microphone is enough. Yeah, so I mean, the whole act of getting up on the stage and talking is that you exhibit this refined train of thought. It's something that, like you said, you're passionate about. You find it really important, and it's not always about like selling some software, or it's all about inspiring people to think about these things, like bringing stuff to their attention, their awareness, and hopefully you plant little seeds of thought into your audience.
Yeah, we're going down the line. Why did I start talking or speaking? I kind of think I was pushed into it at one point by a friend, like, you got to go and do this thing, and I thought, yeah, I'll give it a go. I think it's a misconception that you have like a presentation, and then you submit that presentation. You submit an abstract. So anyone that's thinking of doing a talk or getting into speaking, it's something that you're going to be passionate about, something you enjoy doing. But you don't necessarily have to have it ready. But if you submit and you get accepted, that's like, oh, crap, what am I going to do now? You know, do you back off? Well, no, you actually go and do your research. You make a really good presentation. You get up on that stage. You imagine everybody naked, and because that helps. And then you do it. And then you get that feedback, and you think, wow, that was so worth it. You know, it's a huge amount of work to get to that process, to the end of that process. But when someone comes up, you know, Brian was saying earlier, people come up to you and they ask you questions and they're interested, and you're like, wow, you know, I must have actually said something that people wanted to hear, and that's a really, really great feeling. So I highly recommend going out and doing it.
I feel a bit awkward sitting next to this gentleman who's thinking of me naked.
He's quite nice.
Yeah, I mean, everything everybody else said, absolutely. Also, I like travel. I love coming out here. It's my second time to Bulgaria. I love Bulgaria. But the biggest thing is, you know, you try to. I had a professional organization back in home in Colorado for me, and we're always looking for speakers. And I know a lot of other organizations are always looking for speakers. So it's just getting out there and just finding something and go for it. There's small things to just cut your teeth on, and it's just a great opportunity to get out there. Once you speak at some smaller organizations, some meetups, then you can go out and do some bigger conferences, and it's just a blast.
It's a blast. Yeah. So I think from a speaker's point of view, the difference between us and you is mostly that we're sitting here. There is a little bit of skill in speaking, but it isn't that much. Most of it is about just getting up and being on the stage. And I do speaker training things with people trying to get out to do more. And pretty much everybody we get to come up and stand on here and do a talk, they're really good and they're ready to go. So if you want to do this, there is nothing stopping you. It's just you just standing up and saying, I want to do it. There is no magic. And so why did I do it? I've forgotten. So I work for a company that sells software. So part of that is that you go out and promote it. And nowadays I'm lucky in that I don't have to go out and sell stuff. I just have to go off and talk about interesting things in the Java space. So what really I like doing, because I know you guys are really busy, is it's quite good to come along and say, hey, raise your head a little bit and just look at this thing and just think a little bit differently, and getting some positive feedback. Oh, and as you say, travel. Yeah. Got one.
I do. I could do for two. Actually, Java 2 Days was my second conference I ever attended. I spoke in Vegas in front of a crowd of 100 people. And I don't know how it happened, but I got invited to go to Bulgaria, and I thought, where's Bulgaria? But there were a ton of people in the audience, and they were all very engaged, like you guys all are. And that somewhat gets addictive. It must be, otherwise I wouldn't have been here for the last 10 years. But as Steve said, like, there's really no difference between you guys or us. We're just willing to get up here and talk for 45 minutes to an hour and impart some knowledge that we may have that maybe we feel passionate about, maybe we don't. Maybe we're selling software. But yeah, so if there's a call for papers, and if that's what the original question was about, is about speaking, if there's a call for papers, it really doesn't take more than an hour of your time to submit 4 or 5 talks. Everybody here can talk about something, you know, and come up here and talk for an hour. It's not that hard. I mean, look at these guys.
Well, I think I had the same question the gentleman asked. I had it a few years ago. How should I start? And I was like, I want to do that. So I simply looked at the fact, what am I good at? What am I working on? And what things have I learned a couple of months, years ago? And I submitted papers. And the first 15 were declined, of course. And the 16th was declined. And then the 17th came in, and it was in Sweden. And they said, you're approved. And like, okay. And then I had the same feeling that Andy described. Okay, now I have to write something and be there for real and act professional. Which until up on now, I still cannot do. But so just start with something you know. And it doesn't matter if it's like brand spanking new or if it's old technology and it's a best practice talk. Just grab something that engages you and do something about it. Do a call for papers. And you will just keep on pushing and you will finally get accepted once. And then you continue.
So what we want is your favorite conference to do lightning talks and things like that and invite brand new speakers to come up and give it a go, you know, just on the day. That'll be quite cool.
That would be good.
Can we do that now?
Yeah, anybody who doesn't want to ask a question but wants to make a 5-minute talk is free to come on stage.
Yeah. Does anybody want to come up and hold the microphone?
who's
Does
afraid.
anybody actually feel like they'd like to be a speaker but don't know how to get started? Okay. Oh, half a hand.
A hand back.
Okay. Oh, there, 2 halves of a hand. Excellent.
And it doesn't matter that you're like nervous. Every time I step on the stage, I'm like a bit nervous every time.
Same here.
I think that counts for everybody. There's a bit of nerve every time, and that gives you a certain rush. And we're still alive.
You want to ask a question? Microphone? Who has the microphone?
Java.
So the question is that Java is 20 years old. So what kind of talks do you imagine being made about Java in 5 years, being now 25 years technology?
I remember picking up Java when it was 0.9. So it was kind of the very first version they actually made public. And it's still here 20 years later. I have no doubts that Java is going to be here in 20 years. I don't know at what capacity, what level, but someone that's actually joining the Java community today, I'm just going to go out on a limb here and say, you're going to have 20 years working in Java before someone says, nah, I'm not doing that anymore. So don't be worried about Java dying. It's so big. I think the biggest uptake right now is Python. So the scale of Python is going up like this, and the scale of Java is going down slowly. But Java is up there, and Python is still way down here. So even though that's going up, it's got a lot of catch-up to do to catch up with Java. Anyone else?
Yeah, Jack?
Was it 5 years? Hey, how you doing? In 5 years, all of you will just be listening to speaker robots that have taken over our jobs, because they're going to take over yours anyway. No, I don't think Java's going to go anywhere for a while. The nature of Java is that there's a lot of typing involved and a lot of code to write. So there's a lot of it out there. So like a bad weed, it's going to live probably for the next 30 or 40 years. We still have COBOL code out there as well. But I think the story is probably the JVM will live on for quite a long time as well. So maybe more about some of those languages. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the VM's going to go. I was working out, I think 5 years means we'll be at Java version 22. So not much change then. Whole bunch more VAR support, that'll be in there. But yeah, I wonder whether or not the Java programming language will still be as mainstream, and whether we will really have moved to something else on the VM like Kotlin or something like that. But I suspect that that's really still hard to do, and 5 years isn't very long. So in 5 years' time, I think pretty much what you see now, just more of it, and not an enormous change.
So our industry is dominated by two aspects. There's rapid development and maintenance. And if you look at just about any aspect of the industry, the rapid development is it's the fads, it's what happens, it's what takes, what's get really interesting at the moment and everyone wants to do it. And the maintenance is the stuff that after that application has been rapidly developed and it's become successful, it's what happens. And there are very few things that you can maintain an application at large scale for a long time at low cost in. And Java is one of those things. It's probably now beginning to be the only thing that is reasonable to maintain for a long period at high scale. So Java itself is going to be around for ages. In terms of what the talks are in 5 years, I will still be talking about garbage collection in 5 years. I will still be talking about concurrency in 5 years. I will probably be talking more about the lightweight threads that are coming back into Java with Project Loom, which are equivalent to the Go coroutines. And I think that's going to be a big thing in Java because that is very maintainable. and much easier for very high levels of concurrency. So, of course, my point of view is performance. So the things that I'm going to talk about, they're not going to be dramatically different. They're stuff that are kind of existing now, but maybe not quite mature yet, and they will be more mature in 5 years. But there'll still be at least half a dozen garbage collectors to talk about, and then tuning them, that's not going to go away. And then there's also going to be things about making your application handle better on the yet more cores that we're going to have available to us, and how it's going to handle the data across all those different cores.
I think it also depends on how fast companies are growing and are going from one version to another, because I did a Java 8 talk this year at another conference, and I was like, okay, this will be a history lesson with only 2 people in the room, and it was filled up with 200 plus people and writing things down, and I was like, but that's 4 years old. So what I want to say with that, there are also certain things that are around for years, but you didn't work with it for now in your company or in your assignment, and you want to know more about it, and you want to have a deep dive in it. So still, the older topics that are alive will still be there, because we have programmers from different levels, beginners, intermediate, advanced. So I think more or less the same talks as we see now, we will see in 5 years, but on another level, perhaps. And of course, the new shiny, bright toys we have that will come easier and more often with the new release cycle of Java.
Okay. The question was, what do you think about Kotlin versus Java?
I'm all for it.
Amen.
Right, so probably I should answer that question, because my talk was about Kotlin. Yeah, so I'm the Kotlin guy here. Well, I think that in 5 years we will still have Kotlin. I mean, like I see more and more people moving to Kotlin from Java. Right now I see some movement from Kotlin to Java, like at the language syntax level. Some concepts also will, like the Go coroutines that were mentioned. We have coroutines in Kotlin, they're a bit different than the coroutines in the JVM that we will have, I hope. But yeah, like Java itself, I think will be influenced more and more by Kotlin. Now, where it will end up, if they will merge or not, I don't know. I personally, I would like more of the stuff from Kotlin being moved to Java, but that would mean that some things would have to be not backwards compatible. Like some of these things will happen soon, like the not backwards compatibility in Java, but that's like a high cost. So we have to think about it more. But yeah, I would like to have like one language, not just use 2 languages at the same time.
So machine learning algorithms, they run currently mostly on cloud, but where do you see it going on the edge? What kind of algorithms do you see happening on the edge, and how would you implement it right now?
Skynet. They will
Star computing.
Star computing, yeah.
Yeah, cloud, maybe atmosphere computing, and then we'll go star computing.
And then eventually we'll take over the world.
Yeah, universe computing.
Yeah, universe computing.
I like it. Let's do it.
No clue.
Can you rephrase the question?
Yeah, sure. So currently most are running on big server farms. Machine learning is currently running on massive NVIDIA graphic card farms. But I think more and more we want it on our phone or on small devices. And what kind of algorithms, machine learning algorithms, do you see able to run right now on those small devices? And how would you approach it to implement them on very hardware limited devices?
Sorry.
So Java does go down pretty far. People don't realize how small a device you can run something that's called Java on, like Java Card. And there are efforts to take, basically take the transistors that you use to create a JVM in silicon and get it closer and closer to the processor. So on the very, very tiny devices, there's work afoot to get Java, or even embedded, a physical part of the processor so you can get it smaller. And the reason the Java Card guys like Java, apart from the fact that it's Java Card, is that when you're developing on mini tiny devices, you have to think about what happens if you have a bug and you have to update them. So if you're programming on SmartDust and it goes wrong, how do you do your update on 10 trillion systems? So part of the argument with Java is it's less like it's harder to write code that crashes if you write it in Java on a VM, and so that's why they like it. But I can see that happening. The other thing is obviously stuff like GPUs. GPUs are coming. There are a whole bunch of other new hardware like neuromorphic processors, which are hardware designed to work like your brain. They're coming because they're very power efficient. And then of course there's the small quantum computing stuff. The interesting things about the new hardware on the big side, not sure about the small side, is they have programming models that are completely different. And so we're all going to have to learn how to program computers completely differently again. So when they start turning up, you guys will be learning totally brand new ways of designing solutions. So that'll be fun.
Yeah, I would also like to add that the protocols are evolving as well, right? As the devices get smaller, right, more of the logic will also be on the server side. So making that communication efficient, right, will be an important part as well of the solutioning, right? So you have, for example, I don't know if you heard of MQTT, which is quite popular in IoT-based solutions, right? It's a very efficient way of sending data over the wire. But you also have, I spoke yesterday about GraphQL, I think I mentioned it earlier, and it's all about getting more control of the data that you get back, right, from an API call, and reducing the number of round trips you do, right? Because REST 8 OAuth sometimes can be a bit chatty, so how can you make this a bit more efficient, right? And the technology is evolving very fast, right? The protocols around, making wire communications is also evolving very fast. So I would expect that this is only going to continue, right? And we're going to see an evolution or improvement of existing protocols, right, to accommodate these sort of requirements. And we already see it. Like, for example, gRPC by Google is an extremely good protocol based on HTTP version 2, right? So that would be my take on this. Anyone else?
I don't necessarily agree that in all cases you need like high-power GPUs to run these machine learning algorithms. I mean, particularly for text, because of things like recurrent networks. These things can't be parallelized, but they have to be put in series. So even a CPU is powerful enough to do these things. And I mean, for use cases, like once the network's already trained, and you can put that kind of software in a phone, for instance, in doing like image adjustments, that kind of thing. So the use cases you don't also need the crazy amounts of hardware that these companies are using. It's for obviously like massive data structures. If you've got hours, days worth of video footage, then yes, of course, that's going to be a huge problem. But if you optimize the network well enough, then of course you can always cut your costs down.
I'll give it a go. So the phone, right, is, this one I think is like 90% of it is recyclable. And the GPUs that we're using in data centers now, and the data centers that are out there now, more and more, Apple, Microsoft, Google, they're all looking at using renewable energy. And I think, I love the progress of this stuff, and I love the fact that I paid over $1,000 for this stupid thing. But I also want to live on this earth for a little while. So I want progress to happen, but I want to do it in a way that means that we can do this stuff without ruining what we have. So whatever it is, I hope it's in such a way where there are 5 trash cans I have to throw something away at, and I have to think 40 minutes just to throw something away. I know that's not a technological answer, but that's where I see the future of this stuff going. Because if we don't, then there's nothing going to be used to power this thing because we'll be, I don't know, rolling rocks or something.
Do we have another question from the audience? Yeah, right there.
Hi. So since Java 11, Oracle is dropping support for the Java runtime environment as a standalone. How do you believe this is going to affect desktop applications from a developer and from an end user standpoint?
Okay, another Java question. Jack? Somebody give him...
Not at all. The OpenJDK JVM is completely compatible. Oracle isn't really changing that. Are you specifically talking about Java FX, or was your question?
More about the automatically updated Java runtime environment that end users usually have on their computers. So this is no longer an option, and developers now have to either bundle their own version of the JVM or some kind of distributable for their end users to be using. So how is this going to affect the development process from a consumer standpoint, so end users, or from developer standpoint?
Okay, so with the latest JVM, you can produce a stripped down JRE, which should be really quickly downloadable. So, and ideal for your particular application, customized for your application. So I think that there will be, I mean, there already are companies which will wrap that up and make it downloadable, deployable for your customers, client-side applications. So I really don't think that it should affect anything. If anything, the situation's improved quite a bit because a lot of people weren't downloading, weren't having JVM for embedded into the client, into the browser anymore. It was being, I think it's been cut off from Firefox. It's no longer a one that will automatically download into Firefox. So if anything, I think the situation is improving rather than getting worse.
Yeah, so what do you want? You want Java on a rate with updates, security updates for as long as time as possible. You'd like to have Java installable. You'd like maybe to have a WebStar or a plugin solution if you need it. And the simple answer is you can get that. So you can go and pay Oracle for some money for it, or you can get their OpenJDK binaries, or you can go to Amazon are putting out this Corretto thing. That's another set of binaries. The Adopt organization community are doing binaries with installers. I think Amazon are doing installers as well. The simple answer is everybody needs free Java, and there's a whole bunch of people with vested interest in making sure that you get free Java. And so it isn't going to change. The only thing that's going to change eventually is where you get your Java from, but the rest of it is going to be the same. And the good news is it's all going to be the same Java. It's not like we've got people forking the code bases and doing lots of different things. It's just going to be, you go to OpenJDK, you get stuff, you go somewhere else, you get stuff, it gets built and packaged and made available to you. So there's a bit of a scare at the moment, but when that's all sorted out, I think you're not going to notice. You're just going to get Java the old way, but from somebody different.
And I think the original question was about the runtime environment, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but I don't remember the last time I've downloaded a Java runtime environment. I've downloaded the JDK before, but it's probably been a decade since I've had to do that. And if it's a desktop application that you're running on your desktop, it's usually embedded, or they have some ways to find that. So I think there's no worry here at all.
So let's ask the audience, how many people here work for a company that uses desktop Java? I mean, not as a developer, but actually produces something that their customers use? Okay. So you're
the one.
Yeah. Okay. So are the rest of you, you're basically back-end Java guys? Yeah? Yeah. Yeah. So you need Java for developing, which you don't need an installer for. You can get loads of that. And then you want Java on the server. And again, well, there's loads of those as well. And everybody's producing those. I don't think it's a big deal. I think as long as we continue to put this stuff out with security updates, and you guys are willing to take it and upgrade, then I think that's fine.
So there's an interesting comment about not downloading the JRE. It's true, not many people download the JREs, but with the customizable deployment that you have now with all the modular Java, what I'm finding is that all our teams on the server side are stripping the image down to as little as possible and deploying that into fairly tiny, I mean, they're less than 100 megabytes for the Java application that's running in containers. It's all in containers where I'm working. And that's actually, you might think that's kind of great, but it isn't. So when it comes to troubleshooting, it turns out that they've stripped out a lot of the tools that I would normally use to troubleshoot that come with the JDK. So like now you've got JFR for free, but even the JCommand tool and JMap and JStack, they'll have stripped those out without thinking that they're ever going to need it, but they will. So this is just a point for you. If you go off and you start stripping your images down to as little as possible, you want to keep those troubleshooting tools in the bin directories and not get rid of them because they are invaluable.
Yeah. Other questions? Yep, here, second line.
And probably someone has it. What kind of, what do you think about this in general?
You mean the
Is
Java
it important or not to have
educational certificate you get like?
Yes, like OCA, OCP, and etc.
So what do you think about Java certification? Like to be a certified Java engineer, professional, whatever?
I'm going to bite the bullet here and say I don't think it's important. I think it's important to prove yourself. I've been in open source for probably 15 years, so I never got certified in Java. I said I started Java at 0.9. It's just kind of self-taught Java because it was really interesting. I found it really, really engaging and interesting, and I wanted to know everything, and I think the Java tutorial, back to front, teaches most Java developers everything they're ever going to need to know. It's the official Oracle Java tutorial. Absolutely fantastic. Anyone that comes to me and says, how do I get into programming stuff in Java? I'm like, well, you read that from page 1 all the way to page 1,000, whatever it is, plus all the additional tutorials from the Oracle website, you're going to be a Java professional. Whether you've got a bit of paper that says you're a Java professional, if you're a junior and you go to a company and you're trying to impress upon that new employer that you can do this stuff and you don't have a bit of paper, that's kind of tough. But through things like doing open source, your work is public, so people get to know that you can do this stuff, and they take you on your word, and then you prove yourself. You prove yourself in a company, and you end up becoming a senior developer, and then you go to a new company and you're a senior Java developer, and your name is known as being a senior Java developer. You're not going to have any issues. So I personally don't value the certification. I think enthusiasm is more important.
So it depends what the motivation is for your question. I was the head of engineering for an organization a while back, and whenever we were interviewing Java developers, nobody actually looked for the certification. But on the other hand, we had the developers who were doing the certification, and I was fully 100% behind them because it's a fabulous way to learn. You've got the motivation of actually you're going to be tested at the end, so you need to learn the stuff. It's a very good course, and it teaches you really well. So it kind of depends on your motivation. I fully agree that an open source project is actually better for your CV, but doing the certification as a course is actually quite a valuable way to learn. So it depends very much on your motivation.
Okay. I have to agree with that. Like from my experience, I took certification a couple of years ago, maybe even 10 years ago. I was very excited about it. I didn't tend to learn a lot, but I was quite lucky that I realized I already knew a lot. So it's kind of proof that people are on some certain level. So if you get the certification, you're reassured that you're good. You study good enough. But afterwards, when I got the certificate, I never used it. I just put it into my table and never showed it to anybody, because I can prove that I'm a good developer, and because I know how to reason about things. And mastering language is only a tool. Language is only a tool. You have to know a lot more to get a better job, to progress in your career. But it's a good base to improve your self-esteem, and also to practice the language. And it's also good to practice other languages, not just Java. So there's certification for Java, but you can do everything or the same thing for other languages. And the certification for Java should be just an example what you can do also in other languages.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question. Okay, here, fourth line.
Hey, we heard a lot about some new technologies, and my question is, how will you approach grasping a new technology in a limited amount of time next to your full-time job?
Sleep less. No, actually, that's the point. You have to give in to something, or you find a project that you can use these new technologies in, and if you can, that's awesome. Or else it would be in your free time doing this, and sometimes the wife and kids will not be happy with that, of course. But I heard the story, the other question was, how do you get into talking? Well, that can be an incentive to do a talk about it. Say, for instance, you want to do something about Java 14 and the new features in there, and I do a submission for a CFP, then I have to dive in deep to know what I'm going to tell you, because you will be asking questions. So that can be a start, and that is one of my approaches to do something new. Try it myself, get into deep, perhaps make a talk out of it, or try to incorporate it in one of the projects, or choose my projects on it, if that's possible.
So for me, if it's just fun, I want to play, and I can't justify connecting it to my day job, then I just, as you say, just use your weekends or whatever and just try and do it. But I have the luxury of being able to look at new things, because that's part of the job. So, you know, something new comes out, it's like, well, what does Java do with this? And so what I'll do then is I'll try and use the thing to solve as many problems as possible. So I try to just do that thing. So, I mean, years ago, when Ant came out, long time ago, when Ant came out, I was going, this really is really hard, and I kept persevering with it to do all the things I want to do. So every time there was a problem that I went, that's an Ant solution, I could do with that, I'll go learn it. It took twice as long to do, but I learned so much because I was solving my real problems rather than doing the examples and samples. You get much more, you learn things so much quicker and more usefully if you attack a problem that you have. If you just make up stuff, then it's not particularly valuable. So that's my job. That's how I do it.
I agree with everything being said. I would also like to add, talk to your employer. Find a win-win situation. For example, if you're into blogging, that's a very good way of promote your employer, promote yourself, and also learn, right? And I've been doing that in my company. I know other companies that are doing it. So they'll give you an afternoon or you know, a half a day a week, right, to blog about something, right? Get it out there. Your company gets some publicity, so do you, but you also learn if you write on the topics that you really, you know, want to get into. And it doesn't, you know, they will get it, you know. So talk to your employer. Maybe this is an approach as well.
I think it's a really great question, and it's prompted me with two things. The first thing is you got to be careful. You have to make sure that you filter out the stuff that is not going to be useful for you in the long term, because you don't have an infinite amount of time to work on all of these new technologies. But the other thing is that you don't have to work on this by yourself. And maybe this is a very open source kind of answer, but collaborations are really, really powerful ways of learning these new technologies. Like someone who already knows a bit about it Work with them for a bit, or maybe just grab 2 of your colleagues who you think might find it useful, and just try to build something.
By all means, sleep less. He's right. You're programmers, you got into this, you have some sadomasochistic tendencies to slam your head against a keyboard because that computer's not doing what you said it should do. But find a project, come up here and speak about it, submit for Java 2 Days or any of the other conferences out there so you can go travel. Get your employer to back you, and if he won't, quit and become a consultant. I've been doing it for 18 years. It's awesome. And I don't sleep at all, so.
And when you submit to a conference, you don't have to be the expert. You can submit right now and go, I'm going to submit a thing to a conference that's 10 things I learned about learning this programming language. You know, the first things I hit, the 10 first problems that you're going to hit when you use whatever. You write that now, you submit it to Java 2 Days for next year. You've got a whole year to learn it. You know, put yourself under pressure. Yeah. But I think the most important thing is have fun, because a lot of us go, oh, we got to learn something, because it's like, well, it's part of the day job. But actually, try and find ways to have fun, because we're all geeky, we're all here having fun, and we're just lucky if we get paid for it. But if you don't have fun in any of the stuff that you're doing, then you're in the wrong job.
AI will take your job anyway. Yes. Yes. I think I said this last year. People are always worried about AI and if it's going to make you guys obsolete. And my answer, and it still is, if an AI can do your job, is it really something that you want to be doing with your life? So have fun instead.
And on that bombshell, it's time to end our show. So big applause to our speakers.